Speaking of like journalists missing the mark a little bit, here's Jake Tapper revealing something about his son that I find really interesting. Okay, it just is just like everything I know about sons of this age demographic. Let's take a look at what Jake Tapper was saying here when discussing how Democrats have lost young men.
A left-leaning podcast that shall remain nameless, and we were talking about my kids because I think they were both people without kids, and they asked me about my son, and I said he was, he's a football player and he wants to be a policeman. And their joke was about my 15-year-old son. Oh, how does he feel about minorities? Like the idea that he wants to be a policeman.
He's not talking about fucking Chapo. It's probably like Pod Save America or something. Jake Tapper would never go on Chapo. That's really funny.
He's racist, my son. And that was the big laugh.
Also, I hate that this guy is the fucking like dog whisperer of young men, Scott Galloway or whatever, Scott Gallagher. And he has like weird ass takes on this stuff too. Okay. He's like, oh, my 15-year-old son, does he hate minorities? Like, first of all, they're making a joke. I don't know who the hell was interviewing him. Okay. But like 15-year-old son plays football, wants to be a cop. We all know he's not going to be a cop, by the way. Jake Tapper is never going to let his son be a cop. Are you kidding me? Why in the ever-loving would he ever allow that? That's why you're Jake Tapper. Your son's going to be in media, okay? Your son is either going to be in media or immediately get like a cushy staffing job with like a high-level DC person and go through that and then maybe become a senator one day, okay? Let's be real. Your son is not becoming a police officer. He's 15 years old. It's just not, it's never going to happen. Let's continue.
I got dragged in the comments and all that stuff. And I thought to myself, this is why you fuckers are losing elections.
100%.
Like my football playing son who has no political views. He's 15. He thinks about World War II and gaming and playing linebacker. That's his world. You're deciding he's a racist because he wants to be a cop. And why does he want to be a cop?
Okay, first of all, that's a joke. All right? Like, I don't know. Are there joy killers in the left and scolds on the left? Absolutely. People that absolutely love to behave as though being the biggest woke scold means you are the most morally consistent, best leftist. Okay? But like, that's a joke. That's a joke. Like, you're like, oh, my 15-year-old really loves World War II and wants to be a cop and plays football and doesn't care about politics. Like, first of all, every 15-year-old is already mainlining some of the worst reactionary propaganda on a daily basis. Let's be real. You're a bad parent if you're oblivious to this reality. Okay? Ask your son what he thinks about hoes. All right? Ask your son what he thinks about women. If he says they're all hoes, then you know they are watching every fucking bad every bad manosphere podcast that's out there, okay? Your son's going to be like, on God, them chopped huz, they're destroying my life. Or he's going to call them foids. There's only two, or females. That's the woke version, by the way. If your 15-year-old son calls women females, okay, that's salvageable. If he calls them foids, make sure that there's no weapons in the house, okay, because that's a mass shooter in the making. And if he says chopped huz or like bops or whatever, then, that's also somewhat salvageable. He'll grow out of it. Foids is probably the worst version of that. What the are these words? I'm just giving you the different the different political leanings that young men have. Every single one of them revolves around hating women, okay? Every single one of them revolves around hating women. Is just like, how badly do you, like, how much does it play a role in your life? If you say like foids, femoids, that's an incel term, he's probably gone. Okay, very difficult to save. Like we're talking Hitler Youth. All right, we're talking. This person is like has deep resentment built in against women in general. Okay, if they're saying like chopped huz or chuz or huz in general, like that's just someone trying to be cool. Like that's salvageable to a certain degree. It's still misogynistic, but like, or like fine shit. That's another one. Like this is AAVE baked into the collective consciousness of Generation Alpha and young Zoomers, mostly off of TikTok. Okay, Hassan, please. I'm 32. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't know why every old person loses their goddamn mind when I'm giving you a brief introduction to, like, you know, Gen Alpha and young Zoomers. I'm telling you what the fuck the terminology is. Okay, I'm giving you the terminology. Do you want to know about it, or do you want to fucking act like Jake Tapper and be like, oh yeah, my son is apolitical? Shut the fuck up. Shut up and listen. Okay? Fuck. Yes, 30 is old. Because guess what? Guess what? Back in the day, when people were dying before they made it to 18 on a regular basis, okay, 30 was old. Then there was a brief period where 30 wasn't old, okay? For like the last 50, 60 years, 30 wasn't considered old. But now that like people can present themselves as full human beings online at the age of 12, 30 is old again, okay? Especially because 12-year-olds are extremely online, so they dominate discourse. It sucks, but yes, when 12-year-olds online can present themselves as full developed persons when they're clearly not, okay? All of a sudden, 30 is old again. That's how it is, okay? Figure it out. Just the reality. Sorry. You know, get with the Skibbity program, okay? Skibbity Riz, Ohio Phantom Tax. That's it. Least consistent streamer law. What? Yeah. When someone says, my son's not into politics, he's into World War II, wanting to be a cop, and also gaming, your son's watching Asmongold. Okay, your son is watching Asmongold for sure. But he plays football, so he probably doesn't watch Asmongold. He probably watches Andrew Tate, which again, adjusted to how terrifying the situation is, adjusted to how bad things are, I think, I guess like Aiden Ross might be preferable, like salvageable, because like that's a thing that they encountered because it was the cool thing to do. You know what I mean? Because that's what young boys care about, being cool and being and fitting in. And if that's like the domineering force in your age demographic, then you might have found yourself in the throes of this kind of politics, specifically because you thought it was cool or because all of your friends were doing it, and therefore you could probably get out of it. Okay. What's really funny about this stuff, by the way, is that a lot of people on TikTok apparently have been yelling at me because I said, we gotta figure out a way to like reach young men. They're angry and resentful. And a lot of people instantly went back to their stupid, like, liberal instincts of being like, no, we should continue vilifying men across the board unconditionally. It's like, okay, well, then good luck. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we should just like take the concerns that men have about like why women won't f them seriously and then lean into their entitlement. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm simply stating that like there are obvious issues here. Okay, there's obvious resentment here, and I don't think like automatic vilification is solving this, especially as a political party. Like, think about it. Think about how much Chapo, for example, got fucking railed. Think about how much we got railed as Bernie bros. You know what I mean? Oh, it was so dangerous. It was so dangerous that Bernie Sanders has young men. And it's not even just young white men, by the way. Make no mistake, it's young men across the board. That's the other side of the story that a lot of people are failing to comprehend. The other side of the story is that it's not just white men, okay? is all young men. People don't understand that, like, the racial polarization between the two parties is going away as the winnings from, like, as the W's that the Democratic Party could have presented during the civil rights struggle goes away. And as, like, the only people that remember that, the only black people that remember that are like 60 plus years old. Okay. More and more young black men and young black people, young brown people in general, do not look to the Democratic Party as like the automatic lesser evil any longer. It's that simple. And the Democrats have no solution for this. I don't know. I just, like, the Democrats are no longer the automatic, we are helping the working poor party. They have successfully they've successfully shed that attitude. They've successfully shed that marketing. They really wanted to. They wanted to be the party for the super elite. And here's where we are. They can't even take advantage of the previous marketing that helped them win elections and build coalitions. MAGA cosplays as the working class. The Dems cosplay as anti-racist. This is a pretty reductive but decent way of looking at it.
Cop wants to be a cop because he wants to help people, you know, and he thinks that's the best way he can help people. And that's how the Democratic Party talks to men.
You don't go after their bad role models like you used to, but their behavior is pretty pathological. They're pampered and pandered to constantly. What? I don't think you understand. And this is something that I say all the time. I want universality. I don't care. Healthcare for all means even Nazis get healthcare, okay? If you think that, like, the things that I'm advocating for are specifically tailored towards young men's false sensibilities, you're delusional. That's not what I'm saying, okay? That's not what I'm saying at all. Everybody, this is why universal programs are important. This is what I mean. There is no moment where I'm like, hey, oh, do you feel like you should kill all women because, like, this girl rejected you? Yeah, you're right, King. Lean into that. Like, is there ever a moment where I've said that? Is there ever a moment where I've made excuses? No. I'm simply saying that the Democrats running, right? The Democrats running for office cannot try to present themselves as an anti-racist party only by claiming that their enemy is white men, okay? You're not doing anything. You're not even doing anti-racism. I'm not even saying that this is actually real racism. Reverse racism is real racism. I'm simply stating that presenting yourself as that is not actually doing anything. Presenting yourself as a enemy of they're going to clip you as pro healthcare for Nazis. Well, welcome to the world of Hasanabi Piker. I have always maintained that position. Medicare for all means for all. I want universal social housing, okay, for everybody. I want government funded public housing. That's it. The whole purpose of the goddamn government is to make it so that it's harder for people to entertain. It's harder for people to take advantage, opportunists to take advantage of the volatile market conditions, the volatile economic conditions to move people into that direction. I know you say COVID broke a lot of people's brains, but I genuinely think that 2020 BLM broke a lot of young black men's brains in the worst direction. This is all because of this momentum. Joe Brandon coming in and saying he's going to do shit to alleviate police violence and structural inequalities, and he actively made those two things worse. I think that's the biggest factor of why young black men are shifting more Republican. No, I don't agree with that. But I do think that what the Democrats did, it's not just about young black men. It's just across the board. What the Democrats did is neuter an entire generation's political ambitions. Okay? Because black men are the least consequential aspect of this equation. It's more so the Hispanic voting bloc. If we're looking at, like, some of the biggest gains, some of the biggest switches that has taken place. If you're thinking about, like, who swung in which direction, it's like Hispanic dudes. Okay, way more than black dudes did. And ultimately, part of the reason why I think is because, like, there's a lot of Latino people that are seeing themselves more and more within the within the white in group. I mean, one of the greatest examples of this is like this lady I saw the other day posting about how she got into an Uber and the Uber driver said, "No hablo inglés." And she was like, it's time to do mass deportations. And it's really strange because her last name is like fucking Rodriguez or Menendez or something. Savannah Hernandez. That's her name. Her name is Savannah Hernandez. And she's like, we must deport all of these goddamn Mexicans. It's like, what? Like, what the hell are you talking about? What the what? Bro, who do you think is on the chopping block? If the only motivation for this kind of resentment is unironically white nativist attitudes, you're not white, dumbass. You're going too. Just as the entire reason as to why we had to fucking do mass deportations was because all of these guys are criminals and rapists and violent drug dealers, and they're doing all this stuff, and it wasn't fucking true at all. And that's precisely the reason why the Trump administration currently is like trying to deport a 4-year-old. Okay, like we're deporting 4th graders, 4-year-olds, 16-year-olds, in high school. What happened to the violent drug dealers? Oh, it turns out that obviously the government wasn't just letting rapists go if they were undocumented. Oh my God. Because it had nothing to do with prosecuting crimes adequately and everything to do with trying to make America a more white country. So yeah, I don't know why people like this think that they're not on the chopping block inevitably, considering that the starting point of resentment is not a real crime prevention attitude. That's just a selling point. It's the same shit that like black conservatives tell themselves about the dichotomy between some black people and other black people that are hood, oh, it's not us that they hate, it's the thugs that they hate. It's like, no, dude, they hate you too, dumbass. Like, it doesn't come from there is no real distinction there. There is no valid distinction there. Okay. But anyway, you can't, the thing is, the Democrats used to at least rely on that like resentment that Republicans represent with regular frequency to drum up a base of support, to galvanize a base of support that came from these backgrounds, right? But now it's over. This past election, there was a decoupling of racial politics that I think the Democrats are not ready for. Okay, I'm stupid and was not really tapped into politics when this happened, but how did Democrats vilify and alienate men? And not just alienate everybody. They did alienate everybody, but they also specifically alienated men by, like, Democrats want to present themselves as anti-racists, right? Democrats want to present themselves as anti-racist, and there's a couple different ways of doing that. If you are really an anti-racist, you want to solve some of the material inequalities that black and brown people are facing in this country. Okay, but you don't want to really do that because that would require you to actually do anything in the legislative agenda. And obviously that's going to be a big problem, right? So the way that Democrats have positioned themselves as anti-racist is basically by saying white men are the devil, just by presenting themselves as like anti-white men. White men are dangerous. White men are the devil. Now, it's not totally off base to say those things. Okay, I'll say something like that. I'm a white man myself, but it's ultimately, it's not how you fucking craft a campaign. You feel me? You can't do that. You just can't do that. I don't remember the Democrats saying that. Oh my Lord. They didn't fucking come out and say white men are the devil entirely. Okay. They didn't like verbatim say that. I'm obviously exaggerating. Hello, I'm a Twitch streamer. I'm talking about how like their policy positioning revolved around, hold on. Efendim baba. Okay.
Not just white men, but men. And I mean, I get the idea that they thought Tim Walz could, what's the term he used? Code switch or something? He thought that he could translate the Democratic Party values because he hunts and fishes and owns a gun and was in the army and drinks a beer. I mean, at least there was an attempt, but I find it just insane.
I don't remember Democrats saying that. I know, but how so? That's what the Republicans say Democrats do. Yes, that is. Have you ever taken note of how there is this cartoonish depiction of like woke that right-wing circles will oftentimes cast the entire progressive movement with, and then sometimes leftists will adopt that cartoonish depiction and will end up leaning into it for no discernible reason? Do you feel like this is something that liberals do sometimes? It sounds like you agree with Jake Tapper then. No, I don't. I think I have a more nuanced I have a more nuanced approach to this than Jake Tapper, because Jake Tapper himself is a person that only thinks Jake Tapper himself is also conservative and also presents himself as a hurdle in front of what the Democrats must do in order to create a broad coalition. Okay? Democrats believe the Republican framing DEI hurts white men, when in reality, more often than not, they just never message broad general policies that will connect the white men. Exactly. That's why universality is the best approach here. That's why I always advocate for universal policies. Okay? But when you bring that up, when you bring up universal policies, like one of the greatest examples during 2016 and in 2020 was the way that Democrats counter-messaged against Bernie Sanders. That's what I'm talking about, okay? When they counter-messaged against Bernard Sanders, they did it on the virtue of Bernie bros. Bernie bros are dangerous. Bernie bros are bad. Bernie bros are misogynistic. Bernie bros are sexist. And that was effectively a way to weaponize identity politics in the silliest fucking ways possible against a dude who was advocating for universal policies. Now, why is that significant? One of the things that really frustrated me, and there's videos of this back when I was covering during like the agitative propaganda, when I had the show called Agitprop on TYT, I talked about this extensively. One of the things I covered was Bernie Sanders' policies on universal alleviation of poverty, okay? Bernie Sanders had a lot of universal policies that would overwhelmingly target black and brown communities, right? But he never actually said he was overwhelmingly and directly targeting black and brown communities. And the media would consistently turn around and say things like, well, where's your criminal justice reform? You're not talking about criminal justice reform. He was, right? Of course he was. But once again, the idea that liberals presented was the only way to cut policy for black people is by talking about how you're going to get black people out of prison, which is inherently a fucking insanely racist way to approach the subject. Okay. What do you think? Who do you think gets helped with policies that destroy poverty? Okay. Policies that combat poverty. Who do you think gets helped more? Poor people. And black people and brown people in general live in underserved communities are represented in a higher percentage in those groups. That's it. The idea that the only way to talk about black people in the legislative side is by talking about fucking criminal justice is insane. Obviously, criminal justice reform plays a major role, and Bernie Sanders had that in his platform as well. But the notion that like the only way to talk about black people, the only way to do good policies against black people is either by targeting black small business owners in the way that Kamala Harris was trying to do, or rather by simply talking about like criminal justice reform is insane. That was very frustrating to me as someone who looked at the situation in South Carolina with Jim Clyburn and how Jim Clyburn was like anti-Bernie. And a big part of the reason why Jim Clyburn was anti-Bernie was because he was backed by the fucking the same for-profit insurance companies that were giving him a ton of money. I think Democrats outwardly talk about how diversity for diversity's sake is actually a solution, but they have more insidious ways of vilifying men of all races. You need to shift people's focus away from fighting for crumbs between races to fight for the actual pie against the ruling class. Exactly. Democrats won't do that because they are designed.
Senator Sanders, I do want to put.
Yeah, here. They are the Democratic Party is designed as a hurdle against actual progressive policies, against anti-capitalist measures. Like this is a perfect demonstration. Look, let's do it again.
Senator Sanders, I do want to put the same question to you, Senator Sanders. What message do you think?
Answer that question, but I wanted to get back to the issue of climate change for a moment because I do believe this is the existential issue.
Senator, with all respect, this question is about race. Can you answer the question as it was asked?
I certainly can. Because people of color, in fact, are going to be the people suffering most if we do not deal with climate change.
That's it. Universal policies are incredibly important because speaking about these policies from the perspective, speaking about these policies from the perspective of universality is great because one, you don't alienate any demographics by doing so, with the exception of the rich, I guess, and that's fine. But you also are addressing issues that impact these communities directly. Okay? Like, who do you think benefits more? Who do you think benefits more from Medicare for all? A rich white person or a poor black person? Overwhelmingly, these communities that are poorer on average will benefit more from universal programs. That's it. Same with climate change, same with everything. But it's very frustrating that Democrats are allergic to this kind of messaging. Even if it's fucking performative, they're allergic to it. They love the performance of like attacking people. So do you attacking people that do take the universal approach? So do you understand? Do you understand what I mean when I say the Democrats did this to themselves for years and years and years? Do you get it? That's it. That's what I'm talking about when I said like the way that they presented themselves is like they tried to posture as though like universal policies are actually racist or anything that helps like white men is actually racist. And it's really stupid because the racial depolarization has already taken place. So it doesn't even fucking matter. Like here, Kamala doing pretty poorly among both black and Indian voters and an underrated blow to the IDPOL theory of electoral politics, specifically the idea that Biden Hillary's weakness with non-whites compared to Obama was just about him being black and them being white. Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this extensively as well. Obviously, a hill I will die on is the Democratic response to 30 million people participating in the George Floyd protests is responsible for a large chunk of nihilism and detachment we see in our politics today. Yeah, I think the first wave of nihilism and detachment came under the Obama administration, and the final blow was delivered by, it's death by 1,000 cuts, but big blows came along the way. I think it was a major blow to all of the progress, all the hope, all of the grassroots momentum that was designed to play a significant role in American politics on the Democratic side, on the progressive side, under the Obama Hope and Change campaigning versus like how he actually performed at the executive level, and then obviously Hillary Clinton. Cutting away at Bernie Sanders in 2016 played a major role in causing discontent amongst the base, causing people to say, "F this, I don't care about this at all." And then the final death blow was delivered when Joe Biden won. 75% of the country was like on board with the police precinct being burned down in the immediate aftermath of the execution of George Floyd. Okay. In broad daylight. Think about that. They understood and sympathized with an action that is insane, okay? That you would never expect from Americans. I say this all the time. People that had their first foray into political action did everything. They mobilized, they engaged in direct action, they protested, they shut up, they yelled in the streets. And then when push came to shove, they turned around, they held their nose, and they voted for Joe Biden. They thought, this is going to move the needle in the right direction. So what happened? Did we move in the right direction? No, of course not. Democrats spent most of that campaign shitting on the activist base, then turned around and still continued to vilify the defund the police movement is wrong and bad and whatever. Instead of trying to understand where this resentment was coming from and try to find like a reasonable path forward, they just actively tried to run away from their base again and again and again. That's it. And look where we're at now. Of course, that's going to cause a lot of nihilism. Of course, it's going to cause a lot of nihilism. For so many people, this was their first foray into mass action. They were met with no even the most meager of positive changes, but instead a party who vowed to fund the police more and shit on their slogans at every opportunity. Way to teach a generation that nothing you will do will ever change anything. Yeah. And then there's always a synopsis after the fact where people will turn around and go like, they'll do an autopsy, right? And you see that even today where people are like, crime is down. It's actually better than it's ever been. So why are people freaking out about crime? Okay. Here, this is like all the data scientists, like the statistics urban, like data scientists who are oftentimes like very firmly committed to liberalism. Crime has declined significantly since its peak in the early 90s, yet today 63% of Americans say crime in the U.S. is extremely or very serious, a 7-point increase from 1996 when actual crime rates were nearly twice as high. Homicide has been a bit more tricky, but the murder rate is still about half of what it was in the 80s and 90s, only very slightly higher than the 60s. Now, maybe the crime in the U.S. can still be called serious, and yes, it can be. Of course it's serious. America's a very violent nation. And I've been on this. I've been on the propaganda front, fighting against the sea of lies for years at this point. And this is the easiest way to describe it. Apps like Nextdoor, Citizen, and Ring make people hysterical and make them think crime is ever present and nonstop happening. The crime panic wave from the media designed to boost cop credibility post Black Lives Matter protests is obviously another reason why people were like, oh my God, it's happening all the time. It's happening all the time. It's happening nonstop. And then last but not least, the most visible version of crime is homelessness. And when homelessness skyrockets in big cities, in blue cities, that's where you saw major drop-offs from the Democratic Party. Like, this is the other side of the story. A lot of people go, oh, well, Kamala didn't like underperform that significantly in rural areas or in like in states with like larger rural populations and whatnot. She actually, in comparison to Joe Biden, significantly underperformed in big cities. And that problem is twofold. One, because a lot of rich people have been radicalized into thinking that crime is literally ever present and someone is going to rape and kill your entire family any moment. So we have to do Nazi-style policies and melt the working poor and specifically kill every homeless person. Okay. And on the other front, all the poor people that normally would go out and vote that are infinitely more progressive than the Democratic Party itself are just going, why the fuck would I vote for you guys? You guys are not doing shit for me. It is burning the candle on both ends. All I hear here in Philly, yeah, Philadelphia is a fantastic example of this because Larry Krasner was the method, okay? Larry Krasner is the method for progressive DAs in the entire country. He was singled out as like the worst one. And Fox News constantly talked about how he was letting rapist decapitators go wild on the streets. Larry Krasner, unlike many of these other progressive DAs that got quickly dealt with in places like San Francisco and whatnot, was able to consistently, despite the undemocratic initiatives presented by the Republicans in the state of Pennsylvania, was able to overcome these issues. He was able to overcome the propaganda. He was able to overcome the numerous attacks. He was even able to overcome this undemocratic way of trying to unseat him in the past. They tried to do that too. He just destroyed his challenger last week, and Philadelphia is a shining, bright, shining light in terms of eviscerating crime statistics, okay? He's done a phenomenal job, at least by every fucking metric, in terms of dealing with crime. How did that happen? How the fuck did that happen? It's because he was not allowed, he did not allow to be cooed, okay? The most hilarious thing is the Republicans want to run Krasner's Democratic challenger that lost on their ticket. People also didn't vote Kamala simply because she's a black woman. Let's not forget that part. That's not as significant of a part of this puzzle as you think it is, I promise. Unless you personally think that Mexico is a pro-woman nation state, like more pro-woman and also pro-Jewish in comparison to the United States of America. Because Claudia Sheinbaum is a Jewish woman who is infinitely more popular than Donald Trump and was infinitely more popular than Kamala Harris. Okay? No, don't say it is. Y'all are fucking crazy. Mexico has a massive issue with femicide. No, even in a country where there's a massive issue with femicide, you can still elect a Jewish woman in an overwhelmingly fucking Catholic country. How the fuck does that happen? It's because the Morena Party was popular, okay? It's because the Morena Party was popular. Why was the Morena Party popular? The reason why the Morena Party was popular is because it expanded the welfare state, okay? She is not more popular than Trump. What? She is, like, I think 8 times more popular than Trump. What the fuck are you talking about? Trump is still very unpopular. Wake up. Some of you motherfuckers hang out with Trump supporters exclusively and I guess like beam a bunch of idiotic propaganda into your minds. Claudia Sheinbaum is one of the most popular politicians in the entire Western world. What are you talking about? It's not even a question. And people were aggressively trying to come after me. All the libs, all the Mexican libs were trying to come after me for saying like Morena is a much better alternative. Yeah, she had like I think 85% approval rating. Like that's like we're talking George W. Bush after 9/11 numbers, okay? Just to be clear on earlier, you're just criticizing the monolithic policies based on race, but at the same time, the framing Bernie used there for poor people being comprised of POCs and not whites was all right in use. Yes, because the question is specifically about Bernie Sanders' inability to address like issues that pertain to black people and brown people. And he's saying like, who the fuck do you think gets helped in this situation? Black people and brown people too. As a matter of fact, in larger percentages than white people because they happen to be the underserved communities we're talking about. It's not like Bernie's running around being like, black people and brown people, they're so poor, they're broke. They're broke. They're all fucking poor. They live in poverty. You're gay. Tremendous. You're black. Fantastic. You're gay. Tremendous. Yeah, Claudia Sheinbaum hits 85%, record 85% approval rating as she assures Mexico is ready to face tariffs. She's doing better than Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who was also the GOAT of, like, I would say that AMLO, as far as I understand, was like even more charismatic than Claudia Sheinbaum is. Like, from what I've seen at least, of all the live streams that AMLO used to do to cut away, to break off from like, the domineering force of liberal politics that is backed by capital in all of mainstream media in Mexico. He was able to basically do these live streams and he's like a very weird guy. And I think that's part of the reason why he was like seen as like old, but at least like a lovable old person, you know? Claudia, on the other hand, is much more serious than AMLO is. And she is still much more popular than he is. I think it's partially because she's young. Sheinbaum is not as charismatic as AMLO, but she's less polarizing. AMLO had more detractors on the left than Claudia does. He was also a household name for decades, and that brings lovers and haters. Oh, yeah, I saw this. I fucking love this guy's memes, dude. It's hilarious. Hey, can you guys just run on healthcare at the bare minimum? I think that would the DNC. How to fold. Democrats spend millions to learn how to speak to American man and win back the working class. Nope. We're folding, boys. We are fucking folding. I hate that I hate this article, dude. I genuinely hate this fucking attitude that the Dems have. Like they are allergic to understanding what the real issue is. Breaking, the DNC is reportedly planning to spend $20 million on a campaign to reclaim support from young men amid polling that shows an increasing shift towards Republicans. That's the point. I disagree of FD signifier, not saying that racism didn't play a role, but like Brazil is extremely xenophobic over our Northeastern population, extremely against poor people, super racist and homophobic. And we didn't have to address our dictatorship, and we still elected Lula and Dilma. Reporter, do it or no balls. Admin passing a 600% tariff tomorrow. I agree with you. It's gross. But if Republicans aren't doing that much, why are people still voting for them anyway? It's simple. Republicans dominate discourse and they dominate policy. They are able to literally redirect people's attention to made up bullshit. Okay? It's that simple. They make shit up, and then the Democrats have no way of dealing with it. The Democrats have no way of going, hey, that's made up actually, okay? They don't do anything. And then the Democrats turn around and go, actually, you know what? Oops, you caught us. We were lying this whole time. Immigrants are criminal rapists. Like, what do you expect the average dumb guy to think at that point? Why do you think the fucking the Iraqi Uber driver is like, my sister is undocumented on U.S. soil right now. We can't get her citizenship, but we have to fucking purge our ranks with these like criminal elements that are coming from God knows where. How do you think that guy arrived at that position? He arrived at that position because he's getting beamed misinformation on a daily basis with no counter whatsoever, no counter messaging. What the fuck do you expect? If you want to fix the messaging side, you got to do that. You got to fight in the fucking trenches. You have to humanize the migrants. You have to advocate for amnesty. You have to showcase that like advocating for amnesty is actually popular. It is a popular measure. It is more popular than fucking advocating for mass deportation. It's so dumb. And then we go, oh, how could this have happened? It's like, you let it happen. You fucking let it happen. No, it's not about there's no lib Fox News. It's about what lib Fox News does, okay? CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, all of these liberal outlets ranging from like center right to I guess centrist, MSNBC being like a centrist center left outlet, okay? They all are at the mercy of Republican discourse. They get dominated by Republican discourse. The Republicans flood the market with a whole bunch of bullshit, and Dems have no way of dealing with it and seemingly no interest of dealing with it at all. Oh, Trump is a fascist, but we also have to find a way to cooperate with these fascists. Like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. Then he's not a fascist, or you're a fascist. Which is it? What's going on here? I've been in the motherfucking trenches nonstop for the past 10 years. I'm telling you, okay? Think about why you have arrived at the conclusions you've arrived at, because you get a lot of your information here. You get a lot of your information here where I go through right-wing outlets, centrist outlets, liberal outlets, leftist outlets, and I parse through the disinformation mania piece by piece and go through all of the fake nonsense the Republicans run on and demand that the Democrats actually counter message against it. They don't, and then they fucking are shocked. These things take time, okay? These things take a long-ass time. Democrats are afraid to lead. Democrats are afraid to be identified by tangible policies that actually help the working poor. They want to basically be the gay version of the Republicans. And nobody at the end of the day wants Diet MAGA when the real thing is easy to fucking get.